Breaking news. Confrontation between Trump administration and federal courts escalates. Good evening. We begin tonight with a major legal and constitutional confrontation brewing between the Trump administration and the judiciary. At the heart of the controversy is a federal judge's ruling in Rhode Island, accusing the administration of openly defying a court order, something legal scholars say could push the United States into uncharted constitutional territory. The issue revolves around the administration's decision to freeze federal grants that had already been allocated by Congress. Judge John McConnell Jr., Chief Judge of the U.S. District Court in Rhode Island, had previously issued a temporary restraining order, TRO, blocking the administration from halting the distribution of these funds. But in a new ruling today, Judge McConnell made a striking assertion. The administration has received clear notice of the order itself is unambiguous, and there are no legal barriers preventing compliance. And yet, he says, the administration continues to defy it. To drive the point home, Judge McConnell included a pointed legal warning at the very top of his decision, stating, "Persons who make private determinations of the law and refuse to obey an order generally risk criminal contempt, even if the order is ultimately ruled incorrect." His message is clear: refusing to comply with a lawful court order, even if one believes it to be flawed, could result in legal consequences. The judge has now ordered the administration to immediately restore the frozen funds, end any funding pause, and take every possible step to enforce the restraining order. But the question tonight is, what happens if the White House simply refuses? A president who questions judicial authority. The response from the president has been defiant. Speaking on a conservative radio broadcast, he suggested that courts should not have the authority to dictate actions to the executive branch, saying, "Judges could be ruling, but they shouldn't be dictating what you're supposed to be doing." Then, in a separate interview aired last night on Fox News, Trump reinforced his argument, stating, "The day you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc., then we don't have much of a country. No judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision." These comments reflect a broader argument being made by the president's closest allies, that the judiciary should not be able to interfere with executive decisions. Among those echoing this stance is Vice President J.D. Vance, who posted on social media that judges do not have the power to dictate executive actions, comparing the situation to a judge attempting to order a general how to conduct military operations, something he claimed would be illegal. Even more striking is a comment from Elon Musk, who took things a step further by suggesting that the judge who issued the ruling should be impeached. The emerging question is whether the administration is preparing to challenge the ruling through legal channels, or whether it is signaling a willingness to simply ignore it. Is this part of a larger strategy? This strategy, if it is indeed being pursued, would not be unprecedented for Trump's inner circle. In 2021, before becoming vice president, J.D. Vance publicly advised that if Trump were re-elected, he should take dramatic action to dismantle what he called the administrative state. His suggestion was that Trump should fire every civil servant in the federal government and then dare the courts to stop him. Vance even invoked a famous, though likely apocryphal, quote attributed to President Andrew Jackson. "The Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it." In other words, the idea is to push the judiciary to its limits, force legal battles, and, if necessary, ignore court rulings altogether. A constitutional crisis in the making? Legal scholars warn that this is an unprecedented situation. Historically, even presidents who strongly disagreed with the courts have ultimately complied with their rulings. In 1974, during the Watergate scandal, the Supreme Court ordered President Richard Nixon to hand over White House tape recordings. Nixon resisted, but in the end, he complied, leading to his resignation shortly thereafter. Now, however, experts are asking, what if a president refuses to comply? If the administration ignores this court order, there may be no clear mechanism to enforce it. Traditionally, the Justice Department and the U.S. Marshal Service are responsible for enforcing judicial rulings. But would Attorney General Pam Bondi, the president's staunch ally, be willing to order federal agents to act against the White House? If the administration defies the court and no action is taken, it could set a dangerous precedent, that a sitting president can ignore the judiciary without consequence. What happens next? At this hour, the White House has not indicated whether it will comply with the judge's ruling, appeal the decision and pursue the legal process, or simply ignore the court order and move forward with its agenda. However, Trump's recent signing of executive orders suggests he is continuing to expand his use of unilateral presidential authority. Earlier today, He signed several orders in front of cameras, though reporters were not allowed to ask questions about the ongoing legal dispute. Analysts note that since returning to office, Trump has faced virtually no resistance from Congress. Republicans have largely backed his decisions, and Democrats have struggled to mount significant opposition. The judiciary is the first real obstacle he has encountered. This raises a critical question. If the courts are the only check on executive power, and that check is ignored, what happens next? The big picture. At its core, this confrontation is not just about federal grants or funding decisions. It is about whether the executive branch must obey the rulings of the judicial branch. The Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Marbury v. Madison, 1803, established that it is the courts, not the president or Congress, that have the final say on what is constitutional. But Vice President J.D. Vance, and by extension, the White House, is now arguing that this power is limited when it comes to executive decisions. Legal analysts say this moment could determine the trajectory of the presidency itself. If the court's authority is openly challenged and defied, it could mark the most significant constitutional crisis in modern U.S. history. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. For now, the nation waits for an answer. Will the Trump administration follow the court's ruling or ignore it? We'll bring you more as we learn it. Back to you.